I'm happy to be joined today by NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. Adam, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Sean.
Adam, we're on the eve of the restart of the 2019 to 2020 NBA season. Players have returned to their home markets and will soon travel to Walt Disney World to resume a season that will restart in late July. Adam, why is it important to resume playing, even though we're still very much in a pandemic and COVID-19 cases continue to rise?
In many ways, precisely because there's no way of knowing where this pandemic is going. And what I think we've concluded is that we simply can't run from it. And that, like so many other industries, we're looking to find the right balance between health and safety on one hand and economic necessity on the other. And what we think is we found what makes sense for the NBA, and that is a safe and responsible way to play. Our industry is unusual because, in essence, for our key employees, our players, to do their jobs, they can't wear masks and they can't be physically distant. So we've come up, in essence, with a campus where players will be tested daily, where if a player, of course, tests positive, they will quickly be contained. We will contact trace, and we're limiting exposure otherwise to those players. But our best understanding of this virus is that it's not going away anytime soon. So we feel we have to find a way to move forward, and this is our way.
You mentioned, Adam, economic necessity. How much is that coming into play here?
It comes into play in that we feel an obligation to our sport and to the industry to find our new normal. And so, it doesn't come into play in terms of dollars and cents because, frankly, it's not all that economical for us to play on this campus. It's enormously expensive. Obviously, we don't have fans, I should have mentioned earlier, so we're not selling tickets. But as I said, we almost see it as our duty to find a way that we can still provide the sport of basketball to our fans and to the broader community. And this is how we're going to do it. This is not a sustainable model over the long term, that's for sure, at least based on the way we've conducted our sport historically. But again, we view this as extraordinary circumstances. As Dr. Fauci and others have said many times, this will end. This will not be our new normal forever. And whether that's another year, another 2 years, again, we felt it was incumbent on us to find a way that we could do what we do, which is to play NBA basketball.
Adam, Texas, where you have 3 franchises, and Florida, home to 2 franchises and the home of the restart, are emerging as epicenters of this potential second wave of COVID-19. What's your confidence level right now that the NBA can go through with this plan?
I'm pretty confident, largely because, as I said, we're playing on a campus that is confined in that the only way to gain access to that campus is to be part of our protocol where there is regular testing. And if someone were to leave our campus, again, they would need to test and quarantine in order to return to play. So at least in terms of the model, we're protected from the rate of cases in the community, in the broader community. I'll say, though, of course, when we designed this plan, we were not seeing the kind of increases in cases, frankly, not just in Florida and Texas, but at least as of the last few days, the majority of states in the United States are seeing increases in COVID cases. So it's not as if, especially looking out into the future, there's any safe way to predict or pick a market where we'll be confident that the cases will be sufficiently down. So our model was designed for this. Our model was designed to protect us and our players from the cases in the outside community. Maybe at the time we designed it, we didn't think it would be as necessary as it is now, but at least we're preparing for it.
And if cases keep going up in Florida in the next, I know this is a fast changing thing, but is there any chance you don't go to Orlando at all at this point, or is that full steam ahead no matter what?
Never full steam ahead, no matter what. I think one thing we're learning about this virus is much is unpredictable. And I think we and our players together with their union, the Players Association, look at the data on a daily basis. And if there was something to change that was outside of the scope of what we're planning for, certainly we would revisit, our plans. I'd also say, we're testing daily. I mean, we haven't put a precise number on it, but if we were to see a large number of cases and we were to see spread in our community, that would, of course, would be a cause for us to stop as well.
You mentioned on Friday a significant spread can cause a stoppage once you restart in Orlando. What constitutes a significant spread?
Honestly, Sean, I'm not sure. We have a panel of scientists, doctors, experts that are working with us, and I mean, we're gonna see as we go. I mean, certainly, if cases are isolated, that's one thing. I think a lot of the determination will be our understanding of how our community became infected. That will be part of our judgment in terms of whether we should continue. But certainly, if we had a lot of cases, we're going to stop. As I said earlier, you cannot run from this virus. I'm absolutely convinced it will be safer on this campus than off this campus, because there aren't many other situations I'm aware of where there's mass testing of asymptomatic employees. I mean, so in some ways, this is maybe a model for how other industries can ultimately open. But I'm only going to say, we will be responsible and we will watch what's happening. But I think the biggest indicator will be if we begin to see a spread within our community.
And Adam, will you be spending the entire and restarted NBA season in the Orlando bubble?
I will not. I mean, what we have an arrangement there where, I'll just call it a back door into the campus, where you can almost think of it as different tiers of protection, that people immediately around the players, certainly anyone who is going to be playing, who's going to be on the court with them, whether that be a referee or coach or a trainer, anyone who needs to come in essence within 10 feet of them will be following a certain protocol in terms of daily testing and protection. But then there are a group of us who will be able to come into the community, get tested when we come into the community, but essentially remain far more than 10 feet away from the players and therefore be able to come in and out. I mean, that's the same for some of the Disney employees as well, who won't be living on campus. So I will be down there. I'll be down there at the beginning, but I'm going to come and go. And I think that my time in terms of running the league ultimately is best spent not living down on that campus for the entire time.
Gotcha. Adam, turning to social justice, which has obviously been a huge issue in sports and the entire world. Some players, particularly Kyrie Irving, have wondered if the season restart is appropriate at this time, given that more and more athletes are involved in activism work at a time when we're having a national reckoning on racial justice. You've been talking to players and have said you're invested in keeping the NBA and its players active on that front. How do you anticipate doing that?
Several ways, and all in conjunction with our players through their Players Association. Again, it was a joint decision to restart the season. I certainly respect Kyrie's point of view and any other players who choose not to participate, or even some may choose to participate, but do it with a heavy heart in some ways, given what's happening in the broader community. So I think we have this enormous platform through the NBA. I mean, we have close to 1.8 billion people who follow this league on a global basis. And incidentally, as you know, Sean, this movement is not confined to the United States. We're seeing protests around Black Lives Matter all over the world. So one, I think by virtue of the fact that we're playing, that players will have a broader platform, because if we're able to pull this off successfully, I think lots of eyes around the world will be on this experiment in Orlando, and whether or not we can successfully mount a continuation of our season on this closed campus. I think that gives our players enormous opportunity. It gives us enormous opportunity working with them to draw attention to important issues. And I think whether that comes through programming at halftime, whether it comes through public service announcements, whether it's individual players using their voices to speak out before games. I'm sure there'll be representation of issues, whether it's on shooting shirts, or there's been some discussion with the players about potentially having messages on jerseys. Those are all things we're working through. But again, I think by virtue of us coming together with the players, I think it provides a megaphone in many ways to talk about the issues that are important to all of us.
You mentioned messages on jerseys. It's been reported that the league will allow players to replace the names on the back of their jerseys with social justice messages. Is that true? Will that be allowed?
It's not clear yet, and I don't even think of it as allowed. I think it's something that a few players proposed to us. We thought it was an intriguing idea, and we're working through it to see, how practical it is. I mean, again, at the end of the day, these are basketball games, and we want players to be identifiable to fans. And so there's a basketball reason why their names are on their jerseys. At the same time, we're trying to find the right balance in terms of their desire to use their voices to get these messages out. So, it's an intriguing idea, but we're in the process of sitting down with them now to see how we could work it through over the course of our time in Orlando.
And will players be allowed to kneel during the national anthem in Orlando?
I'm not comfortable with the word allow. I think, we've had a rule on our books that goes back to the early 80s. It precedes even David Stern's tenure as commissioner, that calls for players to stand in a line at attention during the national anthem. I also understand the role of protest, and I think that we'll deal with that situation when it presents itself.
And your colleague, Roger Goodell, released a video in which he said he admits that the NFL was wrong about peaceful protests during games. I asked you this because you're a person who cares about broader social issues and progress. How important is it for America at large that Colin Kaepernick get an opportunity to prove himself in the NFL?
I just begin by saying I think that every player, every athlete should have the right to prove themselves in a league. I can't speak specifically to Colin Kaepernick's situation in the NFL, although, I happened to see Roger Goodell interviewed on that topic, and I think he recognized that should one of his clubs make that decision, it would be an important message to the broader society about Colin Kaepernick's voice and his message. And so, I obviously support athletes, speaking out on important issues, but I also recognize these are not always such easy issues to work through, that when you have the responsibility also to run a league, that there's got to be a balance between what is a social justice, a protest or what you would expect to see, as part of a march, as opposed to what should happen on the court or field. And I think I'll just say those are difficult issues. And, as you asked me earlier, I mean, we've had the rule on our anthem for decades. I don't disagree with this notion that people come together in a unified way to stand for the national anthem. I also recognize that there are appropriate times for protest. And I also understand that when that line drawing comes into play, invariably you're going to upset some factor of, some faction out there. And I think at the end of the day, we just sort of have to be true to ourselves and the values that underlie this league, and try to make values-based decisions rather than political ones. And again, when I see some of the discussion out there in the media, it becomes quickly very polarizing, as opposed to people trying to listen to each other and even accept that they may disagree with an individual decision, that respect people's voices and understand that these are important platforms, and that these athletes also, want to be heard on these issues, understandably. And we also, at least in the case of the NBA, have a league where roughly 75% of our players are Black, and that they probably are some of the most prominent Black people in the entire world. And so that when they don't just park their skin color or who they are when they play basketball, they have their life experiences and they want to bring those to bear. And, we as the league tried to work through those issues with our Players Association, and credit to them as well, and to Michelle Roberts, their executive director. I mean, they also understand at the end of the day, we're a basketball league, and we're just trying to find that right balance, recognizing that these are highly unusual circumstances right now.
Adam, last time you joined us for our TIME100 Talks back in October, the NBA was embroiled in an international diplomatic crisis after Houston Rockets general manager Daryl Morey tweeted in favor of Hong Kong, which potentially damaged your business relationship with China. Has that relationship improved?
I feel it has. Our games are on Tencent, the distribution platform in China. We've continued a dialogue with the Chinese, with our business partners there, in certain cases with certain government officials. And, we're just going to keep at it. We've had a long history in China, and certainly this is a bump in the road in our relations. Obviously, I think we all understand each other. As I've said before, we come to China with a certain set of core American values and principles. And I understand also they have a different form of government, and they have a different view of how things have been done, how things should be done. And hopefully we can find mutual respect for each other.
Turning to the court, Adam, and people are anticipating this restart. Obviously, the schedule came out on Friday, and I think as a basketball fan, you would agree. Lots of people would like to see a first-round playoff matchup between the LA Lakers, featuring LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and the New Orleans Pelicans, featuring rookie sensation Zion Williamson. Pundits and fans picked up on the fact that the New Orleans Pelicans, who are currently outside the playoff race, have the easiest schedule. By opponents' winning percentage, and so give them an easier path to get to that 8th seed. I just got to ask you, is that a coincidence?
It's a complete coincidence.
Is it exciting to think about Zion and LeBron?
Look, it's exciting to see all of our players back out on the floor. I mean, the New Orleans Pelicans are there because they deserve to be there. We felt it would have been completely arbitrary to take the top 16 teams as of March 11th and just cut it off there. And we thought there should be an opportunity, for teams to play into the playoffs. That's the notion of these seeding games. That's why we're down there with 22 teams instead of 16 teams. So the teams are there who deserve to be. And I've just learned by being at the league for a long time, you can't manufacture competition. You want to see the players. Zion is an attractive player because of his skill level, not because of marketing behind him. And Zion's either going to prove himself on the floor or not. He was injured early in the season. He was playing really well before we took our break, and let's see what he's got when we come back. I think I'm certainly looking forward to seeing him. And I think LeBron is hungry to try to win another championship, and that's what makes the game so exciting.
What do you anticipate being the most surprising differences from the viewer point of view, Adam, watching basketball with no fans?
Well, first of all, I'm curious too to see how the presentation is going to work. I mean, I've been watching the international soccer on TV and following some of the different experiments they're trying with representations of fans in seats, crowd noises and other things. I think we're trying to find a way to reinvent the experience to a certain extent, where we want crowd noises, but we don't want it just be a function of somebody with a hand on a knob turning up the volume. That we're looking for a way through an app to make it representative of people in essence tapping on an app in some way for cheers, or maybe they want to jeer. Whatever's appropriate in the moment. We want to find new ways to engage for fans, and because we don't have fans in seats, we can put cameras in places we haven't been able to historically. We're talking to the players about miking and creating new audio experiences that we haven't had historically. I think we're going to learn once we start televising these games what's working and what's not. Hopefully we're going to be in a position to respond quickly, and the features that the fans like will continue, and those that they're not crazy about we'll move on from. I think it's interesting when I talk to players, I think they're more in the zone than I think most people realize. I think that, they're used to often playing in at practice facilities or in our summer league where there's not that many fans in attendance. So I think they will adapt quickly, and we'll see what it's going to be like on television.
I mean, I'm excited for the potential of trash talk, which is this hidden part of the game being broadcast, and getting a little more insight into that. Are you in support of fans hearing more trash talk on the court?
We'll see. I mean, I think that comes with potential for additional miking. I mean, I think there's got to be some limits on the language. I think often players, they understand when they're on the floor, they're saying certain things to each other because it's so loud in the arena. They know a lot of it's not being picked up. I mean, they may have to adapt their language a little bit, knowing that what they say will likely be picked up by microphones. And in all seriousness, we may need to put a little bit of a delay on some of our. Those are all issues that we're going to work through.
Adam, it's no secret it's been a tough year for the NBA. We discussed the China problems at the beginning of the season. On New Year's Day, you lost your friend, mentor, and predecessor, David Stern. Kobe Bryant tragically died in late January. And then on March 11th, you were the first commissioner to shut down a major U.S. pro sports league. And now, as you're ready to restart, a plan that was celebrated not too long ago is now turned controversial because the speed of this pandemic is just too much to catch up with. I just want to ask, how has all of this impacted you personally?
It's been a long year, and it's interesting that we haven't even restarted yet. And so, if we are able to do this successfully, it'll certainly be the longest season in history, maybe for any league. Personally, I'm fine. I have incredible support. We have a fantastic group of team governors who oversee the league, who all have incredible insights and entrepreneurial experiences. They've certainly, as a board, in essence, overseeing this league, we've all worked through these issues together. I've been with the league for 28 years now, so we've been through a lot of issues together. So honestly, Sean, I don't think about it so much about me personally. I just feel enormous sense of obligation. I felt a huge sense of responsibility when we shut down the league to the health and safety of everyone in the NBA community. And I also feel an obligation to try to find a way for us to continue what we do, and that is play NBA basketball. And I think we've come up with a healthy and safe way to do it. And, I shouldn't leave out, we have wonderful fans that, have been with us for a long time and understand the ebb and flow of a season. And it's fascinating sort of the issues that present themselves in sports, just the broad range of things we're talking about right now that, as much as I get lots of emails and social media posts from people who long for the day when saying, can't this just be about basketball? I think it's impossible to turn the clock back. It's that we're part of this larger community, and we've got a pandemic on our hand. We've got enormous social unrest. We've got clearly a recession, maybe could get worse depending on what happens with the virus. And that's why I think at the end of the day that basketball and sports, while it's not completely, removed from those issues in an isolated way, we're part of society. And I think there are a large group of people who are looking forward to saying, well, all right, can the NBA find a way to get going again? And not just for basketball, but maybe it is a model for other industries and a model for broader society, that you just got to fight through these things. And I think that's also what our players about, they really do have that sense, this is what we do. We play basketball, and, can we find a new normal? Can we find a way to crown a champion? And that's really what we're focused on right now.
And Adam, final thing, what are you asking to look into a future that I know is very difficult to predict, but what do you think after being through this pandemic experience will change about the NBA forever?
That's an important question. I think one, maybe it's not in the grander scope of things, but I do think some broadcast innovations will come out of this. I think when we get down to Orlando and working with our broadcast partners on new ways to deliver games, I think, as we said, whether it's through a complementary app, whether it's through angles, audio, feeds that we haven't used historically, I don't think we'll be turning the clock back on those things. I think people will come to expect greater access. We're going to find ways to do that. But I think we'll be changed in terms of the broader impact that the NBA has. We're always struggling to find the right balance, but I think we don't play in isolation. We're part of the larger world. As you said, the season began with more sort of more of a global issue in terms of not just the NBA's relationship with China, but how should the U.S. be interfacing with China? This virus makes the point that, at least from my standpoint, that we have to engage with other superpowers because we have to fight, these issues together. And I think our economies are intertwined. How are we going to work together there? So I think to me, just as I step back, I realized that, it's not unique to the NBA, but, we're living in a highly interconnected world, and that maybe sports can demonstrate that despite disagreements that people have, that people can come together through sports, through arts and culture, through these so-called people-to-people exchanges, and we can find commonality together.
Commissioner Adam Silver, that's a great place to stop this wide-ranging conversation during a busy time. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.